getting lean are probably also in the process. Some people get tremendously lean just by lifting heavy weights, keeping their diet the same, keeping everything else the same. All of a sudden they lift heavy weights, they're the same weight, their muscles are bigger and they're leaner. So little changes can elicit huge, huge, remarkable results. So that's why I tell people, yes, if you have everything right and you have all of these little changes stacked on one another, you can ultimately, have them compound on top of one another and elicit, again, some pretty awesome results. So again, if you're not doing something like this, give it a shot, see how it works for you. If you have any questions, you can put them in the YouTube video comment section here. You can put them on my website. You can email me directly at info@mylifemybody.com. Again, my name is Andrew. I run the site. I do the vast majority of the posts. And I have a lot of experience in health and wellness, certified personal trainer, strength and conditioning specialist. And I practice what I preach as well. Some bodybuilding experience and some high-level, college-level NCAA swimming experience, martial art experience as well. But actually, I don't know if I'm finished here. Let me just kind of wrap this up, see if there's a couple other things I want to mention. If I forget, I'll just edit this out or do another video here. I'm not too experienced with doing these YouTube videos yet. Let me just go over a few of the rules that I've got listed on the blog post here regarding some guidelines that the routine follows, the Chris Hemsworth routine. And I mentioned here that a lot of these rules tend to hold true in other programs as well. But essentially, a few of the guidelines that I use to create this workout. Bigger muscles get worked at the beginning of the workout. Okay, unless you're doing CrossFit or trying to pre-exhaust the muscles as a bodybuilder, or you're focusing more on athletic training, or you're not as concerned with activating the nervous system and focusing on the larger muscle groups with the compound movements, you generally want to work the bigger muscles in the beginning of the workout. Again, there's advanced techniques that you can use that kind of, basically throw that rule out the window. Or if your goal is different than muscle building or getting lean, fat burning, then some other approaches work too. But generally speaking, it'll behoove you to work bigger muscles in the beginning of the workout, almost always. Secondly, compound movements, which are multi-joint movements, they're the most effective for adding muscle mass, burning fat, and improving athleticism. And I mentioned here in the routine, in the blog post, athleticism is not one of the goals here. I think improving athleticism is great. It's going to get you stronger. It's going to make you more functional. It's going to, help you prevent injuries. And ultimately, you'll look better, I think, if you're more athletic. But that in itself, specifically, is not one of the main goals in this routine. But it's one of those things that if we can kind of tag along, and also get as a potential benefit or as a potential result, then I'm more than happy. So using those compound movements, the multi-joint movements again, those are what comprise most of, or are characteristic of most of the exercises. They're multi-joint movements. And another rule here is they should be done before isolation movements. So rows, you do those before your bicep curls. The biceps are involved in that rowing movement, depending on the supination or pronation of the hands, the position of the hands and the wrists. But generally speaking, those biceps, those need to assist the back muscles when you're doing the row. So if you pre-exhaust your biceps are shot, and then you try to do a row, not going to be able to use as much weight on the row, not going to have as much energy, not going to be able to do as many repetitions, ultimately not going to be able to stimulate as much muscle growth, micro trauma ultimately, and then muscle growth ultimately in that muscle tissue. Again, You want to do pre-exhaustion, do your bicep curls, and do pull-ups or pull-downs. That's great, but that's not what this routine is about. And for most people, you know, if you haven't done this before, or if you're doing pre-exhaustion all the time, switching it up and doing your rows before your bicep curls is going to be a good way to go. So that's that. Rule number 3, or guideline number 3 I used here, was the dynamic or power movements are placed in the beginning of the workout. And as a general rule, and you'll find this, you know, if you snoop around the website and you find people who know what they're talking about, exercises that involve more central nervous system activity should come first in the workouts. This is because they, as I said, you know, just said it, they involve more activity and more energy is required from the system, from the body, to do those movements. And therefore, if you want to get the most out of them, do them when your system is fresh. Not only that, but if you do them later in the workout, you know, this isn't always the case, and I don't hammer this point home all the time, but you do increase your risk of injury if you're trying to do, you know, long jumps or box jumps or you know, power cleans, you know, so anything from plyometrics to Olympic movements. Those things can get tough, especially if you're trying to use heavier weight when you do them at the end of the workout. So I say cut it out, do them in the beginning, and that rule applies to everything or every exercise that we have here. Strength and hypertrophy exercises, which is the bulk of the exercises in this routine, which are your standard, you know, normal tempo exercises. Excuse me. So your typical exercises done at a normal tempo, like let's say your bench press, your rows, your deadlifts, pull-ups, stuff like that, should be done after you've warmed up, after any of the power movements, and before you do your cardio or before you do any of your metabolic work or your cardiovascular work or any of those types of things. Number 5 here is, again, it follows 4, your endurance, stamina, and fat loss exercises or activities should be placed in the middle to the end of the workout. Again, these are things that require your body to move a lot more. They typically don't require you to move a lot of resistance, and they're typically more aerobic in nature. So you want to place them at the end when you've already used most of the glycogen that you need and some of the other, you know, contractile proteins and things like that for the heavier movements, and you're not worried about depleting your energy when you do your cardio. So essentially, you're not worried about having that energy in your system for doing cardio. For doing steady state cardio, you don't need a lot of glycogen in your system. You don't need some of the you know, electrolytes that you would need in your system that you would need to really perform at a high level. You don't need that nervous system to be as fresh, essentially. Number 6 here is closed chain movements are opted for over open chain movements. And what you'll see is that closed chain movements are exercises in which the end segment of the exercise limb is fixed or the end is supporting the weight. And an example that I can give you is that, or a general rule is that most compound exercises are closed chain movements. A push-up is a closed chain movement. Every part of the body, your hands and your legs, are fixed to the ground against which you're pushing. A squat is a closed chain movement. And generally they're more advantageous because they provide more core and also synergist or ancillary muscle activation. So you're just hitting your entire system harder. If you sit there and you do a leg extension, that would be an open chain movement because your feet at the end of the leg extension machine are not attached to the floor. They're just pushing against a weight. And then your upper body is just sort of sitting there as well. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm going to get to the next one. If you have questions about that one, again, comments below, website, email me, whatever you need to do. Number 7, again, 7th guideline here that I used to create this workout is I trained opposing muscle groups back to back, or I had a few instances where I have the workout set up where people are going to train like chest and back, back to back. It allows the